Signal is threatening to pull out of Sweden. The Swedish government is proposing a bill that would require messaging apps like Signal and WhatsApp to store user data, including message history, for law enforcement purposes. This has sparked concerns from Signal's CEO, Meredith Whittaker, who stated, quote, "If you create a vulnerability based on Swedish wishes, it would create a way to undermine our entire network. Therefore, we will never introduce these backdoors." The purpose of the bill, which may be passed next year, is for the police and security services to be able to request message history in retrospect for individuals suspected of crimes. The armed forces, on the other hand, are negative and write in a letter to the government that the proposal cannot be realized, quote, "without introducing vulnerabilities and backdoors that can be exploited by third parties," unquote. Things that you can do to get involved is, if you're Swedish or you know anybody in Sweden, send them this story, contact your politicians, and I hate to say it, but have a backup chat app ready. Because I mean, Signal can pull out, but something that's a little bit more decentralized like Session or SimpleX would be a little bit harder to censor in that case. Or if you really are like married to using Signal, which I don't blame you, then have a backup ready on how you're going to access it. Are you going to use proxies? VPNs might work. In this day and age where it's so easy to ascertain a phone's real location and enforce these kind of geo restrictions, that's not always a guarantee, but it is worth considering. Might be a little easier to do from a desktop.
Even if Signal pulls out, assuming you're on Android, I suppose, you still have so many options. You can download the Signal APK from the site through a VPN, spoof your location. They can't force Signal, I don't think, to like implement crazy ways to try to restrict access to it outside of more than maybe an IP address. And even if Signal does that, then I'm sure Molly would still like come in and be an option. Like there's just so many ways to get around this, even if they got away with this. But I do think this one's going to be pretty hard for them to pull off, especially because it's also going after WhatsApp. So kind of the cool thing about like Signal being roped into WhatsApp is that, and it's kind of nice, and it's why, you know, having more end-to-end encryption is good. Now we have big tech companies in some ways on our side, right? Like these companies have a ton of influence, but they also have end-to-end encrypted services that they need to protect, which indirectly protects things like Signal and every other messenger. So even if you use Session or SimpleX or Signal, you are still in some ways getting some benefit from like these big tech companies having end-to-end encryption, because they are in some ways protecting you on the legal side of things, which I think is pretty neat indirectly.
And then on a similar note, this one comes from Tuda. It says, France is about to pass the worst surveillance law in the EU. We must stop them now. So I'm just going to quote the relevant part of the article because, you know, this is one of those blog posts that's designed for public awareness. So most of it is kind of explaining what is end-to-end encryption, why is the idea of a backdoor stupid, which we've covered that ad nauseum last week. Quoting the article, France is about to amend a bill against drug trafficking, the narco traffic law, which will force encrypted messaging apps like Signal and WhatsApp to backdoor the encryption for being able to hand over decrypted chat messages of suspected criminals within 72 hours of the request. In order to enforce it, the text provides for, quote, a fine of 1.5 million euros for natural persons and a fine of up to 2% of the annual turnover for legal persons, unquote. The amendment has already been passed by the Senate and is now moving fast to the National Assembly. So same actions here, contact your politicians. And I just have to point out, and this isn't like a me, you know, I was right, blah, 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 but I'm pretty sure we did mention this when we talked about the UK, is like when powerful countries like, you know, the US, Australia, and I mean, same thing on the other side of the geopolitical divide where you have more BRICS countries like Russia and China, when they do things like the UK did, where they say, give us a back door or go kick rocks, until that gets defeated, that sets a dangerous precedent for everyone else to feel emboldened doing it. Like I remember, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think, and I'm going off script again, so please don't murder me. I think it was Australia that passed the first like age verification for social media law. And then like immediately in the months after, Nordic countries started doing it. All these different European countries, multiple states in the US, like once one person passes a garbage law, like an encryption backdoor or social media age verification, everyone else suddenly feels emboldened to go do the same thing. And that's exactly what we're seeing right here, which is really unfortunate.
In the UK end-to-end encryption video that I made, there were so many people that were just saying like, oh, the UK, they're bad, blah, blah, blah. And you need to have a global perspective on these things. Like, it's just so necessary. You know, digital rights are global, data's global, all these problems affect people globally. So one country, especially a major Western country that's trying to get this stuff passed is going to impact every other major Western country. As of right now, the US is standing pretty strong. Believe it or not, they've actually come forward. I don't think we put the story in, but even the National Intelligence Director right now of the US really called out the UK end-to-end encryption
And
stuff.
I think Trump himself did too. I think.
And Trump did himself. So I think those are both big wins for this kind of stuff, but that might not always happen. They could change their minds about it next month, or whoever the next president is going to maybe be for it. So this stuff is global. So we have to keep that perspective.
You just watched a clip from our main podcast, Surveillance Report, where we talk about privacy and security news every single week to keep you all updated on the newest threats and how to prevent them from happening to you. If you want to learn more and stay updated, check it out here on the screen or in the description. And there's also an audio-only version that you can also find down in the description. We'll see you there. Thanks for watching.